The LA Chargers have already received their first bit of bad news this offseason, and it's not a great start for the team. While they've made some moves, the roster still has significant holes that need to be addressed. We're not talking about a minor tweak here or there. There are real gaps to fill, and it's going to take more than just a few roster changes to fix it all. First off, the Chargers need to focus on filling out the rest of their roster. If you look at their current position-by-position breakdown, it's clear they still have a lot of work to do. While it's true that they've had a solid free agency period so far, they're not overspending or reaching for players, meaning they're taking a disciplined approach. But the roster still isn't where it needs to be for the upcoming season. Let's take a closer look at the needs. At quarterback, there's no pressing need, but when it comes to running back, the situation is different. The team needs to find an RB1B, someone who can complement the starter and bring more stability to the backfield. This isn't just a Chargers issue either. Teams like the Lions, with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, and the Ravens, with Derrick Henry and Justice Hill, have a more balanced running back situation. The Chargers need to follow suit by adding another quality back, and it seems likely they'll look to the draft to find that player. Wide receiver depth is another area of concern. The Chargers need to find a future starter and also add some depth. It's a familiar issue, but one that can't be ignored. At tight end, the team also needs to add depth and possibly a future star at the position. While it's important to look at what the Chargers can do in free agency, they're running out of high-quality draft picks, so the clock is ticking. Then there's offensive tackle, where depth is needed to protect the quarterback. Fortunately, this is an area where they can still add talent, and it's something that can be addressed post-draft as well, either through free agency or trades. It's clear the Chargers have a lot of work to do, but they still have options to improve their roster before the season starts. The question is whether they can fill those gaps with the resources they have left. The Chargers' interior offensive line continues to be a major area of concern. They still need to find a starting center, and while they did bring in some reinforcements, there's more work to be done. They gave a minimal contract to Bozeman to provide depth, but if Bozeman ends up being a starter in 2025, the Chargers will need to seriously reconsider their options at left guard. The goal shouldn't be to roll out one of the worst interior lines in the league with just one new face. The addition of a quality guard from the Eagles was a positive step, but the center position remains a significant hole, and it's something that needs to be addressed. An upgrade to the interior line isn't just a want, it's a necessity. Looking at other areas, the Chargers need to continue strengthening their defense, starting with the edge rusher position. They're going to need to find a future starter there, and it seems likely that the draft will be the place to do that. As for linebacker, the room is mostly set, but depth is still an issue. They'll need to bring in some more bodies to keep things competitive. At cornerback, there's still a need for one solid addition to help shore up the secondary. Safety depth is another area of concern, but special teams looks solid for now. Here's where things get tricky. The Chargers have multiple holes to fill, and it's a bit of a daunting task, but this isn't unique to them. The Detroit Lions were in a similar position not long ago, and after a few drafts, they're at a point where they no longer have glaring needs. That's the benefit of building through the draft. It takes time, but it's the right way to create a sustainable, long-term team. Unfortunately, it's not a quick fix. The Chargers may not be able to plug all these gaps overnight, but the goal should be to build something that lasts, not just chase a quick championship window. It's easy to look at teams like the Giants or Panthers, who spend heavily in free agency every year, trying to fill all their holes quickly. But that approach often leads to a flash-in-the-pan season where big-name free agents might give you one good year, only to fall off the next. You're essentially paying for past performances, and that often leaves you in a tough spot when those players decline. It's frustrating for fans, I know. But if you want to play meaningful games consistently and keep the team competitive over the long haul, you need to build through the draft. The Chargers are doing it the right way, even if it takes time. PFF recently released an article about the Chargers' biggest needs following the first wave of free agency. And without a doubt, Another weapon on offense is a must. While players like Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are still key contributors, the Chargers need more. DeAndre Carter and Josh Palmer are fine, but they don't move the needle enough to take the offense to the next level. Quentin Johnston has potential, but another playmaker on the outside would make a huge difference. Fortunately, the draft offers several intriguing options. Names like Colin Johnson, Matthew Golden, and Marvin Harrison Jr. could all be targets, and getting a top-tier wide receiver through the draft would be the smart way to go. On top of that, there's also the big picture of where the Chargers stand in the league. PFF did a power ranking after the first week of free agency, and while there's still work to do, the Chargers are positioned well. The Ravens, Eagles, Lions, Bills, Chiefs, and Commanders are all near the top, but the Chargers are still in the top half of the league going into the draft. That's a good place to be when you have all your draft picks intact. The offseason last year was about settling things down, getting the cap right, and resisting the urge to make splashy moves for the sake of it. It was a calm, steady approach, and this year, it's all about making the right moves and hitting on those picks. If the Chargers can nail the draft, this team could be in a great spot in just a couple of years. It's a huge opportunity, and they need to capitalize on it. They've taken a more reserved approach to free agency, bringing in players like Khalil Mack and A.J. Harris, as well as adding some depth on the defensive line and offensive line. But there's still a glaring need for playmakers beyond Allen and Williams. This could be a year where the Chargers focus on building up the trenches and strengthening their foundation, with the idea of adding playmakers next year. Alternatively, they could take a page out of the Lions' playbook, who invested heavily in the trenches, but also found hidden gems like Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 4th round. Then, next year, they added Jahmyr Gibbs and made significant strides. If the Chargers approach this draft with that mindset, they could set themselves up for long-term success. The reality is, the Chargers can't address every need in one offseason, and that's okay. The goal here is to build a sustainable winner, and that comes through smart, young talent from the draft, not by overspending on older players who might give you one solid year before they decline. If the Chargers take the right approach, strengthening the trenches and finding a diamond in the rough like a 4th or 5th round wide receiver, they could set themselves up for long-term success. It's about building for the future, not just chasing short-term glory. If they hit on these draft picks, it could really pay off down the road. So, while they can't fill every gap right now, they're doing the right thing by sticking to a long-term strategy that will make them competitive for years to come. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.